5 years of marriage, 3 years of suffering, 1 moment of death, and now, a second chance to rewrite everything. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The rain hammered against the mansion's windows as I stood in the marble foyer, my wedding ring catching the chandelier's light one last time. In my previous life, this was the night everything fell apart. The night my husband Marcus Blackwood brought his pregnant mistress home and announced she'd be living with us for the baby's health. But this time would be different. "Elena, we need to talk." Marcus's voice echoed from the living room, the same authoritative tone that once made my heart flutter during our college days at Stanford. Back when I thought I was marrying my soulmate, not signing up to be a doormat for 5 years. I smoothed my black dress, Chanel purchased with money from my family's pharmaceutical empire that had quietly funded his tech startup's early days. Amazing how he'd forgotten that detail. Walking into the living room, I found them exactly as I remembered. Marcus standing by the fireplace in his perfectly tailored suit, his dark hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it. And beside him, perched delicately on my white sofa, was Sophia, 23 years old, dew-eyed, with the kind of innocence that men like Marcus found irresistible. Her hand rested protectively over her still flat stomach, though in my past life, I'd later discover there was no baby at all, just an elaborate lie that kept Marcus dancing to her tune for months. "Elena," Marcus began, his steel gray eyes avoiding mine. She's pregnant." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. In my previous life, I'd collapsed right here, tears streaming down my face as my world crumbled. I begged, pleaded, and asked how he could do this to us. This time, I simply nodded. "Congratulations." My voice was steady, almost pleasant. "When's the baby due?" Marcus blinked, clearly thrown by my calm response. Sophia shifted uncomfortably, her perfectly manicured fingers tightening on her designer purse, also purchased with my money, though she didn't know that yet. "Elena, you don't understand. She needs somewhere safe to stay during the pregnancy. Somewhere she can be properly cared for." "Of course she does." I moved to the bar cart, pouring myself a glass of wine with hands that didn't shake. In my past life, I'd been too shocked to think clearly. This time, I had the advantage of knowing exactly how this conversation would unfold. "And you've decided our home is the perfect place." "It's temporary," Marcus said quickly, though we both knew that was a lie. "Just until after the baby comes. You understand how important this is, don't you?" "I mean, it's my child. My child. Not our child. Not even just a child." The possessiveness in his voice made my stomach turn, just as it had 5 years ago when I was dying in that hospital bed, finally seeing clearly how little I'd ever meant to him. "Where will she sleep?" I asked, taking a measured sip of wine. "The guest rooms are being renovated." Marcus exchanged a glance with Sophia, who spoke for the first time since I'd entered the room. Her voice was soft, deliberately fragile. "Marcus, well, we discussed that maybe I could stay in the master suite. For the baby's sake. I have such trouble sleeping, and the stress isn't good for the pregnancy." Ah, yes. Here it was. The moment in my past life when I'd been relegated to a guest room in my own home, treated like an unwanted relative rather than the woman who'd stood by Marcus through his father's business scandal, who'd invested her family's money when no bank would touch him, who'd given up her own career in biomedical research to support his dream. I set down my wine glass and walked to the window, watching the storm rage outside. Lightning illuminated the gardens I'd personally designed, the pool where we'd once talked about teaching our future children to swim, the tennis court where my father had beaten Marcus in straight sets during our engagement party. "You know what, Mark?" I turned back to face them, my decision crystallizing. "You're absolutely right." His shoulders relaxed slightly. "I knew you'd understand. You've always been so reasonable, Elena, so mature about these situations." Mature. What a lovely word for doormat. "Sophia should definitely have the master suite," I continued, ignoring the surprise flickering across her face. "After all, She's carrying something so precious to you. Marcus nodded eagerly. Exactly. I mean, this isn't ideal for anyone, but we have to think about what's best for, which is why I'll be moving out tonight. The words dropped into the room like a bomb. Marcus's mouth fell open, and Sophia's composure cracked for just an instant, revealing something sharp and calculating beneath her innocent facade. What? Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised as if he could physically stop my words. Elena, no. That's not, you can't just leave. Can't I? I tilted my head, genuinely curious. You've just brought your pregnant mistress into our home and asked me to give up our bedroom for her comfort. Exactly what part of this arrangement requires my presence? This is your home too, he said desperately. I never said you had to leave. No, you just made it clear I'm no longer welcome in my own bedroom, that your mistress's needs come before mine, and that I should be grateful for the privilege of watching you build a family with another woman under my own roof. I moved toward the stairs, each step deliberate. But you're right about one thing. This is temporary. Elena, wait. Marcus caught my arm as I reached the banister. His grip was firm, almost painful. You're being dramatic. This is just a difficult situation that requires some adjustment. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up to his face. In my past life, this was when I'd caved, when I'd let him convince me that leaving would make me the villain, that a good wife would understand, that love meant sacrifice. You're absolutely right, I said softly. This situation does require adjustment, so I'm adjusting myself right out of it. I pulled free from his grasp and continued up the stairs. Behind me I could hear Sophia's voice, saccharine sweet with just a hint of triumph. Marcus, maybe this is for the best. Elena seems so upset, and stress can be contagious. That's not good for the baby. Smart girl. She was already positioning herself as the reasonable one, the victim of circumstances, rather than the architect of destruction. In my previous life, it had worked perfectly. In my bedroom, soon to be their bedroom, I pulled out the suitcases I'd prepared that morning. Everything I truly valued was already packed. My grandmother's jewelry, my research journals, my mother's first edition books. Let Sophia have the designer clothes and expensive shoes. They were just costumes from a performance I was no longer willing to give. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. Car is waiting outside as requested. Mrs. Blackwood, the penthouse is ready. Marcus appeared in the doorway as I was zipping the last suitcase. His face was pale, his confidence from downstairs evaporating as the reality of the situation hit him. Elena, please, let's talk about this rationally. You're my wife. Am I? I straightened, meeting his gaze directly. Because wives typically sleep in the same bed as their husbands. They're usually consulted before major life decisions. Their homes aren't turned into sanctuaries for their husbands' mistresses. It's complicated. No, Marcus, it's actually very simple. I picked up my purse, checking for my passport and credit cards. You made your choice. You chose her and whatever fantasy of a life she's selling you. I'm simply making mine. Where will you go? The question came out strangled as if he was just now realizing that I might actually leave. I paused at the bedroom door, looking back at the man I'd loved for 7 years, married for 5. In my past life I'd fought so hard to keep him that I'd lost myself completely. I'd died in a hospital bed, alone and forgotten, while he played house with his mistress. That's no longer your concern. Downstairs, Sophia was examining the living room like she was already redecorating. She looked up as I passed with my suitcases, her expression carefully neutral. Elena, I hope you know this isn't personal. Sometimes life just happens. I stopped, setting down my bags to face her fully. She was good. I'd give her that. The perfect blend of apologetic and innocent, with just enough steel underneath to make it clear she wasn't going anywhere. You're absolutely right, Sophia. Life does just happen. And sometimes, so do consequences. Her smile faltered slightly. I'm not sure what you mean. You will. Marcus rushed down the stairs as I opened the front door. Elena, don't do this. We can work something out. Maybe Sophia could stay in the guest house until... Until what, Marcus? Until you choose between us? I laughed, the sound hollow in the grand foyer. You already chose. 3 months ago when you started the affair, tonight when you brought her here, just now when you asked me to give up our bedroom. I never meant for it to happen this way. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. No, you meant for it to happen quietly. You wanted me to smile and play the understanding wife while you had your cake and ate it too. I picked up my suitcases again. But here's the thing about having everything, Marcus. Sometimes you end up with nothing. The rain had stopped by the time I reached the waiting car. As we pulled away from the mansion, I caught a glimpse of Marcus standing in the doorway, Sophia's hand resting possessively on his arm. In my past life, I'd spent the next year fighting for a man who'd already left me. I'd begged, compromised, and degraded myself, trying to win back someone who'd never truly been mine. I'd died believing I wasn't enough, that love meant accepting whatever scraps he offered. But death has taught me something invaluable. The only person who can save you is yourself. My phone rang as the city lights blurred past the car window. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call and blocked his number. Round one was mine. But this was just the beginning. The penthouse overlooked downtown Seattle, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view Marcus could never afford, not without my family's money. Anyway, I stood in the living room at 2 a.m., still in my black dress, watching the city sleep below while sipping coffee that actually tasted good. Amazing how different everything seemed when you weren't walking on eggshells. My phone had been buzzing incessantly. 17 missed calls from Marcus, 12 text messages that grew increasingly frantic, and 3 voicemails I had no intention of listening to. But the call I was waiting for came at exactly 2:15 a.m. Ms. Hartwell? My lawyer's voice was crisp despite the hour. Everything is in motion. The papers will be filed first thing Monday morning. Perfect. And the other matter? Your father's accountants finished the audit. Every penny traced, every loan documented. Mr. Blackwood is going to have a very unpleasant Monday. I smiled, setting down my coffee cup. In my previous life, I'd been too heartbroken to think strategically. I'd fought for Marcus emotionally, desperately, trying to prove my worth through tears and pleas. This time, I was fighting with weapons he'd never see coming. The elevator chimed, and my assistant Rebecca emerged, looking remarkably put together for someone I'd called at midnight. The security footage from the house has been copied, she said, setting down a tablet. 3 months of Mr. Blackwood bringing Miss Chen through the side entrance. Very thorough documentation of their affair, and the financial records. Every transaction, the jewelry, the apartment he's been paying for, the medical bills, all traced back to accounts funded by Hartwell Pharmaceuticals. Rebecca's expression was professionally neutral, but I caught the hint of satisfaction in her voice. She'd never liked Marcus. I scrolled through the files on the tablet. In my past life, I'd been blind to Marcus's financial maneuvering, trusting him completely with our shared accounts. Death had given me clarity about many things, including how thoroughly he'd been stealing from my family while playing the devoted husband. There's something else, Rebecca said carefully. I had our investigator look into Miss Chen's background. I looked up from the tablet. This was new information, something I hadn't known in my previous life. She's not who she claims to be. Her real name is Sarah Martinez, and she's 31, not 23. She's done this before twice. Same pattern, target wealthy, married men, fake a pregnancy, extract money, disappear. The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. In my past life, I'd hated Sophia for being young and beautiful and pregnant with my husband's child. I'd never imagined she was a professional con artist playing a long game. How far along is the supposed pregnancy? According to the medical records Mr. Blackwood has been paying for 12 weeks. According to the actual medical records we obtained through unofficial channels, there is no pregnancy. I set down the tablet, pieces clicking into place. The elaborate performance tonight, the urgency to move into the house. The way she'd manipulated Marcus into feeling responsible. It was all theater. Keep digging, I said. I want everything. Her real identity, her previous marks, her exit strategy. Everything. Rebecca nodded and headed back to the elevator. Alone again, I walked to the windows and stared out at the city. Marcus was probably pacing the mansion right now, trying to figure out how everything had gone wrong so quickly. In my past life, his plan had worked perfectly. Install the mistress, keep the wife placated, maintain his comfortable lifestyle funded by her family's money. But this time, he'd miscalculated completely. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Marcus. It was his mother. Elena. Darling, what on earth is going on? Marcus just called me, completely beside himself, saying you've left him for another man. I almost laughed. Even in a crisis, Marcus couldn't tell the truth. Hello, Margaret. I left Marcus. Yes. But not for another man. Then why? Margaret Blackwood's voice was sharp with confusion. He said there was some misunderstanding, that you'd overreacted to something trivial. Did he mention bringing his pregnant mistress to live in our home? Silence stretched across the line. Margaret had always prided herself on her family's reputation, their standing in Seattle society. The idea of her son not just having an affair but flaunting it publicly would horrify her. That's not possible, she said finally. Marcus did, tonight. Asked me to give up our bedroom so his girlfriend could be more comfortable during her pregnancy. Another pause. Elena, I'm sure there's been some confusion. Marcus loves you. He's always loved you. Margaret, with all due respect, your son loves my trust fund. He's been funding his lifestyle and his girlfriend with my family's money for months. I could hear her sharp intake of breath. The Blackwoods had built their social standing on appearances, but underneath, they were barely solvent. Marcus's father had lost most of the family fortune in bad investments years ago. My marriage to Marcus had been their financial salvation. I think you should come home, Margaret said carefully. Work this out like adults. Marriage requires compromise. I tried to compromise for 5 years. Tonight I chose self-respect instead. After ending the call, I poured another cup of coffee and settled into the leather chair that faced the windows. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Please come home. We can fix this. He'd borrowed Sophia's phone when I blocked his number. Predictable. I typed back. Fix what exactly? Your affair? Your lies? Your theft? The response came immediately. You're being dramatic. I can explain everything. No need. My lawyers will handle all future communication. Elena, please. I love you. I stared at those 3 words for a long time. In my past life, I'd clung to them like a lifeline, believing that love could overcome anything. But love without respect is just manipulation with better marketing. If you loved me, you wouldn't have cheated. If you loved me, you wouldn't have brought her to our home. If you loved me, you wouldn't have stolen from my family to fund your double life. This time, there was no immediate response. At 6 a.m., my doorman called to announce a visitor. I wasn't surprised when Marcus stepped off the elevator looking like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect appearance was disheveled. Shirt wrinkled, hair messy, eyes red-rimmed. Elena, he moved toward me, but stopped when I held up a hand. How did you get past building security? I told them I was your husband. His voice was hoarse. Technically true, not for much longer. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Don't say that. We can work through this. Can we work through your affair? It meant nothing. Can we work through you bringing her to live in our home? It was temporary, I swear. Can we work through you stealing from my family to fund your double life? His mouth opened and closed without sound, so he knew I'd figured that part out. Elena, I can explain. No, I walked to the kitchen island, putting distance between us. In the past I would have listened to your explanations. I would have believed your promises to change. I would have fought for us. Then fight now. His voice cracked with desperation. Fight for us now. Why would I fight for someone who brought his pregnant mistress home and asked me to accommodate her? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, the gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. It's complicated. Sophia, she needed help, and I couldn't just abandon her when she's carrying my child. Your child? I nodded slowly. Tell me, Marcus, when exactly did you verify this pregnancy? What do you mean? Doctor's visits. Ultrasounds. Blood tests. When did you personally witness proof that Sophia is pregnant with your child? He blinked, confusion replacing some of the desperation. She showed me the test, and she's been going to appointments. Appointments you pay for but don't attend. She said it would be too awkward for a woman to have the father of her child at prenatal appointments. I tilted my head. That seems odd, doesn't it? I could see the doubt creeping into his expression, the first crack in the foundation of lies Sophia had built. In my past life, I'd been too devastated to think clearly, too focused on competing with her to question her story. Elena, what are you saying? I'm saying you might want to ask for proof before you destroy your marriage for someone else's fiction. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him trying to process this possibility. The great Marcus Blackwood, tech entrepreneur and master manipulator, realizing he might have been played by someone better at the game than he was. Even if, he started, then stopped. Even if that were true, it doesn't change what I did. No, it doesn't. I moved toward the elevator, pressing the call button. The affair is unforgivable. Bringing her to our home is unforgivable. Stealing from my family is unforgivable. But the fake pregnancy? That's just the cherry on top of your disaster sundae. The elevator doors opened, and I gestured for him to enter. Elena, please, don't do this. I need you. For the first time since he'd arrived, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. He looked so lost, so broken. In my past life, this would have been enough to make me reconsider. You needed my money, Marcus. You needed my family's connections. You needed someone to clean up your messes and smile while you humiliated me. I stepped back from the elevator. You never needed me. As the doors closed between us, I heard him call my name one last time. The sound echoed in the empty penthouse long after he was gone. My phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca. Legal teams are assembled. Financial audit complete. Background check on Sarah Martinez Sophia Chen, complete. Ready to proceed on all fronts. I smiled, walking back to the windows as the sun rose over Seattle. Marcus thought he'd been playing chess while I played checkers. He had no idea I'd been playing an entirely different game. Round 2 was about to begin. Monday morning arrived with Seattle's typical drizzle, but I felt nothing but sunshine as I walked into the offices of Hartwell Pharmaceuticals. The building my grandfather had built, the company my father had expanded into a biotech empire, the legacy that had funded Marcus's lifestyle for 5 years. Today, that funding officially ended. Elena. My father looked up from his desk as I entered his corner office. I got your message. Are you absolutely certain about this? David Hartwell was not a man easily rattled. He'd built his fortune on calculated risks and strategic decisions. But the idea of his daughter divorcing her husband and cutting off all financial support had clearly shaken him. Completely certain. I settled into the chair across from his massive mahogany desk. Marcus made his choice when he brought his mistress home. I'm making mine. The financial implications alone will destroy him completely. Yes, I'm counting on that. My father studied me with sharp blue eyes that had intimidated Fortune 500 CEOs. This isn't like you, Elena. You've always been so forgiving. That was my mistake. I opened the tablet Rebecca had prepared, sliding it across the desk. Take a look at exactly how Marcus has been spending our money. My father's expression darkened as he scrolled through the financial records. The apartment he'd rented for Sophia, the jewelry, the expensive dinners, the medical bills for a pregnancy that didn't exist. All of it was funded by Hartwell money while he played the devoted husband at home. Son of a bitch! My father muttered, a rare break in his professional composure. He's been stealing from us for months. Years, actually. The audit goes back to when we first got married. My father's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID and raised an eyebrow. It's Marcus. Don't answer it. But my father was already picking up, putting the call on speaker. Marcus, this is unexpected. Mr. Hartwell, thank God. Marcus's voice was strained, desperate. I need to speak with Elena. She's not answering her phone, and there's been a terrible misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, my father interrupted, is how you thought you could steal from my family while sleeping with another woman. Silence stretched across the line. I could practically hear Marcus's world crumbling. Sir, I can explain. No need. My lawyers will handle all future communication. Your access to all Hartwell accounts has been terminated as of this morning. You can't do this. The desperation in Marcus's voice was delicious. Elena and I are married. Those are our joint accounts. Joint accounts funded entirely by Hartwell money. My father said coldly, money you've been embezzling to fund your affair. I'd suggest you contact a lawyer. Marcus, you're going to need one. The line went dead. My father looked at me with something approaching pride. Feel better? Getting there. My phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca. Phase 2 complete. The media just received the story. 20 minutes later, every major news outlet in Seattle was running the headline, Tech CEO's marriage implodes. Affair, embezzlement, and fake pregnancy scandal rocks Seattle society. The story had everything journalists loved: a wealthy family, a cheating husband, a con artist mistress, and financial crimes. By noon, Marcus Blackwood was trending on social media for all the wrong reasons. I was in my father's conference room reviewing the divorce papers with our legal team when my phone rang. Marcus again, this time calling from the office. Pick it up, I told our head attorney. Put it on speaker. Elena, Marcus's voice was raw, barely controlled. You have to stop this. The reporters are outside the office, outside the house. They're destroying everything. Are they reporting lies? I asked calmly. That's not the point. This is private. This is between us. You made it public when you brought your mistress to live in our home, Marcus. You made it financial when you stole from my family. Actions have consequences. Elena, please. I could hear the panic now, the complete breakdown of his usual composed facade. I'll do anything. I'll cut all contact with Sophia. I'll go to counseling. I'll sign a postnup. Anything. Where is Sophia now, Marcus? What does that matter? Simple question. Where is your pregnant girlfriend? Another pause. She left. When? This morning. After the news broke. She said she couldn't handle the stress. How convenient. And did she take anything with her? What are you implying? I'm asking if Sarah Martinez, that's her real name by the way, took any valuables when she disappeared. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. How did you? The jewelry. She took the jewelry. Your grandmother's jewelry that you gave her? Yes. The same jewelry that was actually my grandmother's, given to us as a wedding gift. Elena, the jewelry worth approximately $200,000 that you gave to a con artist who's been playing you for months. I heard something crash in the background, followed by Marcus's anguished scream. The sound was so raw, so broken, that for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. She's gone, he said finally. Everything's gone. The accounts are frozen. The investors are pulling out. The board is calling for an emergency meeting. Marcus. I kept my voice gentle, almost kind. Do you know what I learned when I almost died? When you what? I'd let that slip, a reference to my previous life that didn't make sense in this timeline. I learned that the only person who can save you is yourself. And the only person who can destroy you is also yourself. Elena, I love you. I've always loved you. No, Marcus, you loved what I could give you. My money, my family's connections, my willingness to overlook your flaws. You loved having a wife who would smile and stay quiet while you did whatever you wanted. That's not true. It is true, and the proof is that the moment you thought you had something better, you threw me away like garbage. I never threw you away. You brought another woman into our home and asked me to give up our bedroom for her. What would you call that? I could hear him crying now, great gasping sobs that would have moved me to tears in my previous life. This time, they just sounded pathetic. I can't lose you, he whispered. I can't lose everything. You already have. I ended the call and looked around the conference room. Our lawyers were trying to hide their expressions of shock and satisfaction. My father was watching me with something approaching awe. Remind me never to cross you, he said finally. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Blackwood Technologies stock plummets as scandal unfolds. CEO under investigation for embezzlement. Another buzz. Breaking. Sophia Chen revealed as serial con artist Sarah Martinez, wanted in 3 states. And another. Seattle society rocked as Hartwell heiress files for divorce. Demands full asset recovery. By evening, the story had gone national. Marcus Blackwood, the once rising tech star, was now a cautionary tale about hubris and greed. His company was in freefall, his reputation destroyed, his assets frozen. I was back in my penthouse, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and crimson, when the doorman called. Miss Hartwell, there's a man downstairs claiming to be your husband. He's quite distressed. Should I send him up? I could see him from my window. Marcus standing on the sidewalk outside the building, still in his suit but now completely disheveled. He was holding something in his hands, and even from 40 floors up, I could see he was shaking. No, I told the doorman. But thank you for asking. I watched him for another hour. He didn't move, didn't leave, just stood there in the rain that had started falling again. Occasionally he would look up at the building, and I wondered if he could somehow sense I was watching. My phone rang. Not Marcus this time, but Rebecca. It's over, she said simply. Sarah Martinez was arrested at SeaTac trying to board a flight to Mexico. She had your grandmother's jewelry in her luggage, along with jewelry from her previous marks. And the pregnancy? Complete fabrication. The medical records were forged. There never was a baby. I closed my eyes, feeling the last piece of my past life's puzzle click into place. In that timeline, I died believing Marcus had chosen another woman and their child over me. I died thinking I wasn't enough. That love wasn't enough. But there had never been a child. There had never been love. There had only been greed and manipulation and lies. There's more, Rebecca continued. Marcus tried to access his emergency accounts tonight, the ones he thought you didn't know about, and frozen, all of them. Turns out he'd been using stolen Hartwell funds to build those accounts too. He's completely broke. Elena, worse than broke, he's facing criminal charges. I looked down at the street again. Marcus was gone. Miss Hartwell? Rebecca's voice was careful. Are you all right? I'm perfect, I said, and for the first time in years and lifetimes I meant it. The next morning brought news of Marcus's complete breakdown. He'd been found at 3 a.m. in his office, having destroyed everything he could get his hands on. Security footage showed him screaming my name, begging for forgiveness to empty air, finally collapsing in a sobbing heap among the wreckage of his dreams. The business journals called it the fastest fall from grace in Seattle history. In less than a week, Marcus Blackwood had gone from successful CEO to unemployed criminal defendant, facing federal embezzlement charges. But the final perfect irony came 3 days later, when I received a call from my old research partner at Johns Hopkins. Elena, I know your situation is complicated right now, but we have an offer. The biotech division wants you to head our new drug development program. It's everything you've ever wanted to do. Everything I'd given up when I married Marcus. Everything I'd sacrificed to support his dreams while abandoning my own. When do I start? 6 months later, I was standing in my new lab in Baltimore, holding the patent for a breakthrough cancer treatment that would save thousands of lives. The research I'd abandoned for Marcus had led to this moment, but only after I'd learned to value myself enough to pursue it. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Former tech CEO Marcus Blackwood sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for embezzlement and wire fraud. I deleted the notification without reading the details. Some stories end with reconciliation, with forgiveness, with second chances. But some stories end with justice, with the person who was used and discarded rising from the ashes stronger than ever, while the person who betrayed them faces the consequences of their choices. Marcus had wanted everything: the rich wife, the exciting mistress, the money, the prestige, the power. Instead, he'd ended up with nothing. And me. I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is getting free. The rest, as they say, was just the beginning. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.